Your next promotion is just the beginning, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 177. Today's episode is a really incredible interview and candid conversation with my dear friend and colleague, Angela Hahn. Angela is the host of the Anger podcast, and she was a former attorney turned life coach, and she has a lot to share on the subject of being uncomfortable in your own skin, being uncomfortable in your environment, being angry, what anger means, and how we can work with our anger to create higher levels of success than we ever even imagined in our life. In fact, as you'll hear in this episode, she doesn't even use the word success anymore. So listen to the episode, take lots of notes, feel it in your body. It's an absolutely incredible, candid conversation, and I'm so excited to share it with you. Let's get started. Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms. Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am so excited about today's episode where I am bringing in not only a dear friend and colleague of mine, but an expert in anger. And as you know, from a couple of weeks ago, I did an entire podcast episode on anger and what's been coming up for me and all of my clients and the frustrations that they're dealing with. And Angela is an incredible person. I'm going to tell you all about her here in a minute. But one of the really cool things about her is that she has been, I'm sure it's a continuous evolution of reinvention for herself. But more recently, I've seen her leave her corporate job as a lawyer and transition into full-time entrepreneurship. And at the time, she had this podcast that was out for several years, I think, what that was called Fit to Practice. And I think that's all still available for you to listen to and dive into. But now she has rebranded that into the Anger podcast. And so all of this happened all at once. And I was like, oh, first of all, I love Angela, need to have her on this podcast. But now I really feel the fire and really feel like I need to have her on this podcast to share with all of us what anger means to her, how she's been expressing herself over the years, what her corporate transition has been like for herself, and what success means, and all those great things that we always talk about on this podcast. And in particular, what it has been like as an Asian American in the corporate world. So we're gonna talk about all the things today. Let me officially introduce Angela. Angela Hahn is an anger coach. She helps people find out what to do with their anger. She is a former attorney. This is the bio that she sent me. I love it. It's so succinct, but I did want to add one more thing. Angela is changing what the word professional means on LinkedIn. This is something that she actually told me personally when I had a one-on-one conversation with her probably about like 6 or 8 months ago. And we were talking about LinkedIn and what LinkedIn needed it to be and like what it's not and how people are presenting themselves on LinkedIn. And I just so admire the way that she shows up. And she's like, well, yeah, it's redefining what professional means. And I just think that's absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to link to Angela's profile in the show notes. You absolutely have to follow her on LinkedIn. It is a fascinating read, but really she jolts me out of my day, right? She makes me think about how I'm showing up, kicks me back into the present moment. I know I've been talking on and on about how amazing she is. So let's let her talk a little bit so that you can start to see for yourself. Hi, Angela. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So we talked about this idea that you've been reinventing yourself. And like I said, I'm sure this is not something that's new. It's probably been your entire evolution of life. But what do you feel like has helped you be the most successful in this way of, well, you describe what you've been doing over the past couple of years for yourself as a professional?
Actually, like 2 years ago, my first had just turned 1 now then. And I think I was actually kind of to go like right into it. Like I was in at the ER around this time because my first had gotten some burns because I had put a hot soup on the table, and then she just started to walk and then pulled the placemat, and then she got some burns. And so I think 2 years ago around this time, I was just coming home from the ER or the hospital stay for about a week, just grappling with that. And I think that was actually probably the beginning of like me truly seriously thinking about what I really want to do with my career and everything else in my life.
So did you guys just hear what just happened? Like this is the teacher coach in me, but I asked her a question, and I think this would be such a great opportunity as a listener to think about how you would answer what's been going on for you the past couple of years. And we usually answer it with this sort of like big overarching, like, oh, I've either made these massive shifts or maybe just something that kind of blows that off. Oh, lots of things have been happening. It's sort of like, hey, how are you? I'm fine. That kind of, she answered it. First of all, she really thought about where she was exactly 2 years ago, and then answered it with such specificity that I mean, it's like already I have a lesson in how to show up and how to actually engage in conversation with people. Angela, you are always such an inspiration. Like even just the way you told that story, it was so brilliant. So I wonder if I'm onto something. Is this like an active practice that you do, or is it just part of your personality to keep it real?
I get so interested when people tell me like how are you so like real and how are you so authentic and stuff. And I do think about that. Like I don't necessarily process the things that I do as like, okay, like how am I being real today? Because it's not something that I necessarily put effort into. It's just something that I feel like is so necessary to be very truthful about what I'm experiencing, both like internally and externally. Because I think that one of the things that make me so angry is just like you said, when people gloss over what really is the truth. And then that kind of is an example for everybody else to also start lying about where they're at. And so I think that's kind of like I investigated the answer to that, and that's the answer that I have.
Right. In this moment, right? That's the answer that you have. It's amazing. So you talked in that answer about really kind of questioning, looking at your career. I know that you were a very successful attorney. It seemed like, because we were also in coaching circles together, that you enjoyed your job for the most part. I don't know for sure, but you were happy. You had worked hard to get there. So what was that investigation for you in terms of looking at what to do next? What is it that who do I want to be in this world? How do I want to show up?
Yeah. So I think a couple things. The first is that I internalized the fact that my goal needed to be that I needed to be successful. And so that was a goal that was somebody else's goal and I adopted at some point in my life. And so I was kind of obsessed with that. And the second thing that happened is that I didn't even realize for a while that I didn't even know what success meant. I didn't even know that word success was even my word. And so I was just kind of following not just somebody else's story, but also following someone else's word around how I needed to live my life. And so in that process, because of that obsession, I became very clear about what that story meant. Okay, what does it mean to be successful? Here's a checklist. What does it mean to be what does success even mean? What does that entail? I had a whole checklist. And so I checked off all the boxes there. And I recognized that when I did check off all the boxes, I had a dream job. I was able to live the kind of flexible life and have the kind of flexible career and an excellent boss that just gave me everything that I wanted according to that story that was not mine. And so when the reason I recognized that and saw that and witnessed the fact that that was not my story is that I did not feel like I belonged, even after I had checked all those boxes. And that's when I kind of began to see that what I wanted to do was much bigger than just a dream job.
Wow. And I noticed that in real time, this thought leadership that you were putting out on LinkedIn happened while you were still working as an attorney, and, your ideas were keeping it real, crossing the line, so to speak, if there is this arbitrary line, from the beginning. Was part of that public facing persona, putting your ideas, your thought leadership out there, was part of that your exploration to try and figure out what is success? What is it that I really have to say? Or how did you use, I guess I'm calling it thought leadership, but really just that, like putting your ideas out so that other people can see them?
Yeah. Okay. So I think the question is like, why did I say things? Is that kind of the question?
Yeah, well, because you were talking about this exploration of like what is success and what, I mean, there's the internal reflection, but then I also noticed and witnessed, and this is only because I can only really witness what's happening externally, is that some of that reflection was happening in the public forum, right? And you were getting a lot of connection to other attorneys and people following you on LinkedIn and starting really big, massive conversations. And I was just curious of like how, like for lack of a better word, posting, sharing about what it is that was happening internally was part of your process to figuring it out.
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to think why I did what I did because I don't remember, except that all I knew was just how necessary it was.
Uh-huh.
And I'm trying to remember why I felt like it was so necessary. And I think the big reason is that I was dissatisfied by what was available to me. I think I was dissatisfied by just the lack of transparency, the lack of truth, the lack of reality. And the reason I think I was so angry about that is that when people were kind of hiding behind the screen or not talking about the things that really mattered, I felt the need to do the same. And like anger typically for me happens when I'm silenced. And I felt like everybody else had power over me. And I think I was kind of sick of giving that power to everybody else. And so I decided, okay, if I'm not going to get the truth from other people, I'm going to just declare my space and talk about my truth and just kind of let whatever happen.
And what happened?
I just what happened while I was sharing? I guess, yeah, I connected with a lot of people and I got to see myself. I think that is the most important thing. I mean, yeah, like I anybody can connect with anyone, but I think that a lot of the times still, even when I was being like quote unquote real, there were still parts of me that I hid. And there were still parts of me that wanted to subscribe to like kind of whitewashing myself and trying to be more white, trying to be more like a white man, because the white man is the most quote unquote successful in the society that I am part of at the moment. And so I was trying to still hide certain things. And when I saw that I was doing that, I recognized like I felt more suffocated being surrounded by people who were like, who didn't want to look at their ignorance in any capacity. And so it was just more of like understanding and discovering like who I am, how I felt, what I wanted from other people, and then remaining true to that each day and just sharpening my skill in doing that.
I remember a post that you did back when we were doing like the AI generators. And like, I think you remind us of what it was, but it really stood out to me. You were like, I put in like successful lawyer or something like female successful lawyer. And anyway, I'm going to let you tell the story because it was amazing. It was very shocking. And just really told the story of what you mean by this idea of whitewashing and the success and what that looks like for us.
Yeah. Do you remember which post it was?
Well, specifically, there was the images, right? And so you put in some sort of keywords to create these, and everybody was doing it on social media, right? It was like these images of these beautiful portraits of people. And you were talking about your eyes in particular, how you're, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that I remember. Yeah. So what happened was, somebody shared somewhere that like there's this AI professional photo shoot. And it's only like $20 something or something. And all you have to do is you have to submit like 10 different photos of yourself and like with different backgrounds. And so I did that. And then they generated like, I don't know, 30, 40 quote unquote professional headshots. And when I looked at it, like all of my eyes were like enlarged. And I'm Korean, I'm South Korean. My eyes were enlarged and my mouth was it smiled more. And what else did it do? Like it put like a professional kind of like clothing on me and stuff. And so it's like none of those things are me. Like I don't subscribe to blouses. And I don't like and not that like other people, if you want to wear a blouse, like by all means, but don't make me subscribe to that, right? And so like it was certainly like just a one great example of how AI is already racialized. And it was a fun exercise just to confirm what I already knew.
Yeah, yeah. And it's had a statement, it had an impact on me. This was probably many, many months ago, and it's still the visual impact. And I was like, wow, that matters. And so in terms of success, what do you feel like is your definition of success now that you're understanding what that means for yourself?
Yeah, so I did this exercise during a talk several months back, asking the audience, okay, when you think of success, what is the color of their skin? What is the color of their hair? What are they wearing? What is their gender? And how are they talking? What is the color of their eyes? All that stuff. And the final question was, does the person that you're imagining look like yourself? And so when you are thinking about a word that you are orienting yourself to, and that word doesn't even aspire your own image of yourself, then that is not the word that we should be pushed to orient to. And so there are so many other words that are available, like magic, or there could be sorcery. It could be witchcraft. It could be spirituality, whatever it is. Like, it could be alchemy. It could be chemical reactions, whatever it is. And so it's more like, okay, what is your word? What kind of word do you want to claim for yourself? And if like maybe none of those words matter to you, or maybe your words change each day. So, but it's more like, okay, I want to unsubscribe from the fact that we are so heavily relying on this word that was never even ours to begin with, and is simply a product of the patriarchy.
Oh my gosh. So I'm like, okay, I just got schooled a little bit in my own internalized word usage and racism, because I use the word success all the time. I have people come on this podcast, and I think what you're offering there is an opportunity to change the word, right? Versus like, I think what I would think of as my goal would be to change the definition of success, right? And in some ways that's what I'm doing, and showing and showcasing women and different types of leaders and what success looks like. And I think that is, for me personally, that's part of my mission and what I'm trying to do. But also, why do we still use this dated word that has such a charged energy around it? And still implies that we're becoming something who we're not. Like, I'm just like, my mind is blown. And now I can't wait to start using other words on this podcast, because it's so good.
Yeah. I think
so important.
Yes. And my word, like at some point were like some of the words that I mentioned. And now it's kind of more, the word that's important to me is sustainability. And sustainability is just something that is not mentioned at all, especially like in the corporate, whatever success conversation. Sustainability is like somehow like seen as inferior, which just absolutely makes no sense. It's all about like cycles. It's all about honoring your capacity at the moment and expanding in ways that are under your own terms for things that you care about. But it's almost like when we think about success, the things that you need to care about is already decided for you. And that's just not acceptable to me.
Yeah, so good. Now, I was thinking about another word that is not acceptable in the corporate world, which is anger. And the irony is what happens behind those closed doors and very openly is one of the most aggressive like arenas in the world. Like, the corporate world is so aggressive. There's so much pervasive anger. It is everything that is happening. And that's why women often don't fit into that mold. They see that anger, they see that aggression, they see men trying to one-up each other. And they're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where my values fit in here. Yet, the one thing we cannot talk about and we cannot address is the word anger. So
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about that, since that's the promise of today's podcast, that we're going to talk to the anger expert. And how do you view anger, and why is it so important to really start a conversation or an entire podcast about?
Yeah. So first of all, I kind of, in honor of like dismantling all of my subscriptions to stories that are not mine, I run my business in the most illogical ways. That is how I keep my business sustainable for me. Just so, like, anything that I was quote unquote supposed to do, which is to do whatever, like, you need to keep the same podcast, or you need to like call yourself a certain thing, or whatever it is. I just kind of ask myself, like, is this what I want to do right now? And I'm actually like thinking of changing it again because that's just how I feel. And your audience should also probably know that I have been diagnosed with bipolar 2 and OCD recently, even though I've had symptoms for a very long time. And so that kind of offers me just such a depth and breadth of different ideas that I can pick up on. And it also gives me the capacity to execute on it without having and I don't know, I don't want to say attachment, but too much of an investment in terms of like how it's going to turn out, because it's just all sort of an experiment for me.
I just had this conversation with one of the women that I work with, and she was talking about, I really just see me as somebody who kind of like drops in, solves a really big problem, and then quits. She's like, is that bad? Like, and I was like, no, that's amazing. Like, right. Like, you don't understand what because she was like, I'm really sick of being here at my job. And like, it's like the project's over. They don't seem like they want me. I'm like, they don't want you. It's time to find the next project. Right. And so even just your owning of that, right. You're just like we've said this entire podcast, you're giving other people permission to own those sides of themselves that are like, oh, that is who I am. I do change my mind. I do whatever I want. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, I was really angry about white supremacy. And I was like, okay, I'm going to just change my whole business to the anger podcast and be the anger coach. That's it. And then if I change it again, I'll change it again. Period.
Yeah. Well, you know what I was angry about when I made the podcast episode a couple of weeks ago was there were a couple of things. One was I felt actually pretty cool with my anger. And I'm sure you must feel that way too sometimes. Like, I'm much more friends with it now than I used to be. And so I was like, oh, it has been raining nonstop in California. Trees are falling down. Our fence fell down. Like, there was just so much like energy happening. I had energy inside me. But then the thing that was actually making me angry was how many clients were coming to me giving up on themselves because they were so angry at the system. They were so angry at their boss. They were so they were fed up. And so there's this thing about anger that where you get fed up, and that's actually good. And then what? Right. And so I was seeing them get to that fed up part and retreat and quit and stop engaging and like giving up and saying, oh, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to go. And even like, I'm not saying stay in the job. I'm saying like, you've got something to say, right? You're noticing something that needs to be fixed and that you have the power to change. And so that was that was actually getting me really fired up and wanting to do something about it, to show people that they could use this anger in some way. So how do you feel about that voice, that being able to use your anger, and I guess the different shades of anger or whatever it is that you want to share?
Yeah, so this is kind of how I see anger, and I shared this a little bit in my podcast as well yesterday when I was reporting it. But I kind of see anger as like the stew that's like boiling, and oftentimes, like anger, like I was saying earlier, anger happens when we're silenced in some capacity. Like whatever we're feeling, whatever we're thinking, what we're experiencing is somehow silenced. And so it's kind of like in the stages of cooking to like ideal temperature. And then underneath the pot, there is that fire, and the fire that's like making it warmer and warmer so that it can cook. That I would call a resistance. And so resistance is like kind of telling yourself, well, it's not a big deal. You're being dramatic, you're being so sensitive, all of those things. And when you resist for long enough, when you keep the fire on for long enough, then the stew is going to like literally stew and it's going to just explode and get too hot. And the chances of that hurting more people and hurting yourself like increases even more. And so it's not even about using the anger, it's about experiencing that anger, because that anger offers so much information about what you care about. And so are you going to kind of turn off that fire, that resistance for a second, and be able to kind of enjoy, almost enjoy and experience what it is that's actually in the stew? Can you consume it? Can you smell it? Can you really kind of allow it to nourish your body with the ingredients that it was prepped with? Because like your anger is not just cooking for a reason. It's there because it wants to share something with you.
That's really good. Oh my goodness. I'll just give you a really specific example of the boiling over. And I love this articulation of it, because the boiling over, for one person I have in mind in particular, looked a lot like going and telling the perpetrator, her boss, what he did wrong, and like getting mad at him. And I think what we were actually doing, and I didn't really think of it this way, is we were looking more at the ingredients and why was his behavior unacceptable to her? What does matter to her? And less about making sure that he knew what he did wrong. Right. And that gave her a place to go. Like, it gave her a next step. And that next step might have been at some point to tell him, to share with him. And it also might have been to hire a lawyer. Like, it might, whatever that might be. But unless we kind of looked at the ingredients, then it was just this boiling over pot. And it was just like, it's just, you can't do anything with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard. And I think it's kind of like, if we kind of look at our journey with anger in a linear fashion, it's like you first kind of experience the ingredients a little bit, but then it's not fully cooked yet. So you doesn't quite like show up as anger, but you still see it, you see what's going on. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times you're kind of like the general messaging, especially for women, is that like we are too emotional, that we need to like keep quiet and just like stop being so sensitive and so emotional. And so we just kind of tell ourselves that exact story, saying like, oh, even though that person said this and that to you, like you're just being sensitive. And so we just tend to not say anything or not express, or even we just ignore our anger just to begin with. And so then what happens is that anger doesn't go anywhere, like that fire keeps going. And first of all, I want to say that even when we're at a place where we feel like we are not in a position to express our anger or experience our anger in any particular way, I want to first really recognize and acknowledge that is the most natural thing, because we like I was saying, we've been told to silence ourselves. That is the safest thing to do. And so I also see a lot of women beating themselves up, like say, oh, I should have like said something, I should have but been more aggressive or whatever. Whatever decision that you've made, whatever you decided to do with your anger is what was available to you at the time. And that is like, we have actually a very limited number of options that are available to us. And so we just want to honor the fact that you took the road that was there for you at the time. And so that kind of shaming is something that I think we want to dismantle a little bit oftentimes. And even after we kind of silence ourselves and tell ourselves it's not a big deal, it continues to build over a certain period of time. It's not just at work, but also at home and other places or whatever, in our capacity as parents too. And we, a lot of the times, find ourselves coming into a place where we just cannot handle it anymore. And so we explode, we damage things, we hurt things, whatever. And at that point, like that is kind of the point where a lot of people get very anxious about, oh my gosh, I don't want to reach that point where I'm exploding and hurting and being dangerous and all that stuff. And the first question I want to ask is like, are people being hurt, or are people just uncomfortable?
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe you've just been taught that you expressing your truth is dangerous, when in fact, you're simply setting a new paradigm for how we need to hold ourselves in high regard. And so that's the first question. And the second question is, even if you did hurt people, even if that is true, are you able to have your own back? And this is something that I learned from our coach, Simone Sol. And it's like, even at the quote unquote, worst case scenario of like you really hurting, even the people that you really care about, are you still able to, I don't want to say love or accept, because that can feel a little bit like onerous too, but like simply witness yourself and hold yourself even in those situations. Because I'm willing to bet the people who really do love you, even if they do get hurt, even if they do lash out at you as well, they will still end up being able to create space to hold for you. So in the end, however we express our anger, whatever it is that we do, it always offers us some sort of opportunity to hold ourselves and some sort of information about where we want to orient ourselves to.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, since you started the anger podcast, have there been any surprises, anything that you've learned about yourself since making this transition?
So one thing that was a delightful surprise is that that I, like, just after the first couple of sessions, my clients who specifically came to me for anger coaching didn't need anger coaching anymore. And so, yeah, because all the anger was just like, they knew exactly how to experience it and how to relate to it. And so we just started talking about all kinds of other things. And that has just been an amazing experience. And it was not even like nobody was like, okay, I'm done with my anger. Like, okay, can I like stop coaching with you anymore? It was more like, okay, this means so much more is possible. Let's keep going. Let's keep doing the work. And so this really shows me that when we know how to experience our anger, we also expand our capacity to experience everything else on the spectrum of emotions.
Yeah, this pot of ingredients, I mean, that never ends, right? And we can just keep throwing things into it and looking at it and exploring what it wants to be. But when it's just constantly boiling over, we can't look at it. We can't do anything with it. And so like there's just so much available to us. And I was also thinking about the work that you and I have both done with David Bedrick and shaming and unshaming, and looking at that as part of this. You mentioned that briefly about anger. And I think that what I have experienced in the unshaming is how quick the transformation is for me. Like literally like realizing that what I'm doing with a particular aspect of my personality or something that's been bothering me my entire life, that I'm adding shame on top of it, lifting that shame. It's just like, I mean, it's like instantaneous almost. It's really incredible. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, now I can get to work. Now I can do what I've always wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. And also, something that I mentioned earlier is that anger is just one emotion from the spectrum of emotions. So like we might also, your listeners might also recognize sometimes like, or see that sometimes even when something amazing happens, like, I don't know, you get a promotion or like you get really celebrated or whatever, like we sit in the delight, but like within like minutes or shorter, we start thinking about like, okay, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I have to also do this. Well, it wasn't a big deal. Or like, oh, like I have to blah, blah, blah. And like, oh, like what if this happens or that happens, right? And that is also a reflection, like the result of us being told to limit our capacity for any emotion, period. Like, okay, you feel joy and delight. Oh, actually, you shouldn't be feeling that much. Like that's too emotional. And kind of the same thing with anger too, right? You shouldn't feel this much anger. Where like I think anger is one of those emotions that are the hardest to feel and hold. And so when we expand our capacity to hold that emotion of anger, then we will also be able to do that for all these other emotions. Like when we do feel joy and delight, it will last longer because now we recognize that, oh, it's not something that should be silenced or suppressed in any way.
I have a brag of a parenting moment recently, and this totally comes from all the work that you and I have been doing and just like this process. And my daughter is having difficulty at school and feeling very left out and hurt and doesn't like to express her frustration and sadness publicly, but then she'll share it with us at home. And I've been kind of trying to have conversations with her about it and talk to her about it and acknowledge her suffering. And then I just had this thought one day where I was like, you're probably really good at experiencing joy as well, aren't you? And she was like, well, yeah. And I was like, do you find that when you like something, you get really excited about it and you're very joyful and like very expressive? And she was like, all the time. And then she started telling me about her capacity for joy. And I was realizing that she was also suppressing that as well, because with all of this, it all goes together. And so then I decided to have conversations with her more about her ability to express what she loved and unshame that. And then I noticed that she was able to speak up for herself at school a little bit more, that she was able to share with her teachers or with the other student what she was feeling. Anyway, I just like when you described that, I was like, yes, that is exactly what we just went through. And it was so beautiful.
Such a good example. That is, I couldn't think of a more beautiful example.
It's so good. So I want to acknowledge, as an Asian woman working in the corporate world, I understand that as a white woman that I don't always have the same experiences as you have. And we've talked a little bit about the patriarchy and white males. But I wonder if, before we go today, if we could talk a little bit about your experience as an Asian woman working in this structure, this corporate world, and if there are any things in particular that you experienced along the way that can educate us on that particular aspect of it.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I can't remember a time where I felt like, oh, it's because I'm Asian that I'm feeling this way or I'm being treated this way in the corporate setting. But I do have a lot of experiences before and after. Maybe I'm just suppressing those memories. But even if they did happen, the things that I remember even more is kind of before and after my corporate life, which is like in school and also like in my capacity as a coach. And so I think that one of the things that I remember like back, I mean, just like way, way, way back, this was like maybe over 20 years ago, when I was like in elementary school and I was here for camp. And I just remember being made fun of by these young white girls. And just to kind of since then, I've just conditioned myself to be afraid of white women. And so that is just like one of my earliest memories. And I think later on, I just kind of suppressed that too. And that one of the things that happened post-corporate is it's a pattern that I was ashamed to admit because I thought it spoke to my quality as a coach. But then after I was getting more and more clients, I recognize this as an actual truth, which is that a lot of white women tend to hire white coaches. Any white person tend to hire white people, and they're more hesitant to hire non-white coaches. And I got very angry about that. I think that has been one of the several experiences that stands out to me that I'm remembering at the moment.
My gosh, this is so helpful. And, one of the things that I really try and do whenever I have a guest on here is really speak to their experience and just open space for that. And so I really appreciate you sharing both of those things. I can think of numerous examples where that could be true for my clients and what they've experienced, but also it just helps me watch out for it if I'm being that way. And so, yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. That's part of your beautiful vulnerability and openness. So I talked a little bit about following you on LinkedIn. What are some other ways that people listening today can connect with you, work with you, all the great things?
Yeah, just follow me on LinkedIn.
It's really like a masterpiece. Her work, her body of work on LinkedIn. There's nothing else out there. And yeah, definitely connect with her there. And before we go, I wonder if you have any final words of advice for someone who's looking to advance their career in the corporate world, feeling like they're stuck, feeling like they're struggling. They don't know exactly what to do next. Anything that you would like to leave us with today?
I think I would leave with a question, which is that if there was no right or wrong answer, what would you do?
Oh, this is just, I'm like, I got to keep talking. Oh my God. So good. There's this quote on Facebook, like if you weren't literally like in the Facebook hallway, I don't know if it's still there, but it was like a thing. It was like, if you weren't afraid, what would you do? Mm-hmm. That is a better question. What you just asked is such a better question. I'm just like, oh, my eyes are watering. It's like, if there was no right or wrong answer, what would you do? Mm-hmm. So good. So good. Such a better question. Oh, thank you. Well, let us know. Connect with us both on LinkedIn and let us know if there was no right or wrong answer, what would you do? And I'm so thankful for you, Angela, and all of your leadership. And actually, I'm even more grateful that I chose to have you on the podcast so quickly, because who knows how much longer the Anger podcast is going to be out. And so we'll have to have you back for the next one and have another really great conversation here on women changing leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.